Good morning, colleagues. Welcome to yet another workshop with the Research Capacity Development Unit at the University of Johannesburg. Today's workshop is titled Qualitative Data Collection Techniques. My name is Qualitative and I will be your moderator today. Firstly, I would like to notify you that the session is being recorded and I have already started the recording. Secondly, I would like to thank all our attendees for taking the time to join us today in this workshop. And most importantly, I would like to thank our presenter, Dr. Gabriel Monyera, for his effort with preparing and giving this presentation. Before I can introduce Dr. Monyera to you, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules and some important information. And so for the housekeeping rules, if you do have questions during the presentation, please raise your hand if you would like to speak. Alternatively, you can post your question in the chat box. I will then indicate to the presenter to address the question. And as I have already mentioned, that the session is being recorded and the recording together with the presentation slides will be uploaded on our module community and RCDMS before the end of the week. And also a feedback survey will be sent out during the session on the chat box. May we please request that you fill the survey out for us to gain some insight on whether this workshop was useful and how we can improve in the future, as well as to provide some kind words to the facilitator for their hard work. And this will also be used for the facilitator and RCD reporting. By filling out the survey, it also ensures that you get the certificate of attendance, and you can also suggest some of the topics that you would like for us to cover in future. And also just to remind everyone that we have launched our RCD management system, which is otherwise known as the RCDMS. And if you have not yet registered, please, we urge you to do so. You will find the RCDMS on ULink under the services tab. And then that's when you'll find RCDMS. You click on it and then you register your details. And if you do have difficulties when registering, please do not hesitate to send us an email on rcdinquiries@uj.ac.za and we will assist you with the registrations. Without further ado, I will then introduce to you our facilitator, Dr. Gabriel Monyera, by reading out his bio. So Dr. Gabriel Monyera brings a wealth of experience as a former assistant lecturer, high school educator, and current research writing specialist. His research focuses on trade policy, export promotion, foreign direct investment, and regional integration in Africa. Dr. Monyera is committed to helping researchers achieve scholarly excellence through effective writing. I will then hand over to Dr. Monyera. Over to you, Dr. Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Koketsu. May you kindly just indicate that you can all hear me. And also when I've shared the slides with you, may you kindly also indicate that you can see the slides that I'm going to share with you now. I've shared the slides with you. I just want a confirmation that you can see them and also that I'm audible.
Yes, we can see the slides, Dr. Gabriel,
all right.
and you are audible.
No, thank you so much. I would also want to thank the participants who have joined us for the session for today. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, actually, I think on the 12th, I presented on quantitative data collection techniques. So this is more of an extension from the presentation and sort of building on the presentation that I've already done in the past. That 2 days ago, that was focusing on the quantitative side. Just allow me to close my window. There's noise that is coming through from outside. Okay, thank you so much. I'm back with you. So today we are going to look at the qualitative data collection techniques. Okay, so within this topic, I will just look at the techniques themselves and a bit of ethical considerations, that we must consider when we are dealing with this collecting data using this kind of techniques. But also, I will introduce to you what does it mean when we say maybe possibly qualitative research, just a little bit of background to those who are not yet well acquainted with the qualitative research method or the qualitative research design. Okay, so what is it that we call quantitative research? So this is simply a systematic approach to understanding human behavior, experiences, social processes, and meanings through the collection and analysis of non-numerical data, such as interviews, observations, and textual material. So unlike quantitative, here we do not, the data is not in a numerical form or in a categorical form. So the data, we are focusing on understanding the experiences or the social processes or the meanings through collecting and analyzing the data that you get from the participants. So you are looking at it from the perspective of the participant. You want the lived experiences of the participants. So it is interpretive and exploratory in nature, often underpinned by theoretical frameworks such as phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, or narrative inquiry. So when you talk of phenomenology, the focus is on lived experiences of individuals regarding a particular phenomenon. Remember that which you want to find answers to, right? So that is the phenomenon that we are talking about, that which you are seeking answers to. Okay, so the purpose when we look at phenomenology is that you want to understand how people make sense of their experiences. And it's very useful when one is exploring deep meanings such as emotional or psychological responses, right? So we have, I think, the theorists that are usually linked to that. We have Edmund Husserl, Martin Heidegger. Those are the ones who are considered as the proponents or the larger voices in terms of when you look at phenomenology. Then we also have the grounded theory. Under grounded theory, the focus is on developing a theory grounded in data collected from the field. So you go and you collect the data, but then from there you can, sort of come up with a theory. So instead of the quantitative that we said comes from a general to a specific, qualitative, you are starting from a specific to general. So you start with collecting the data, then from analyzing the data, you can that can inspire a theory, or you can come up with a theory. So it is ideal when little is known about a process or when explaining how something happens, right? So you have to use grounded theory. Then in terms of ethnography, you are now looking at focusing on cultural patterns and perspectives of participants in their natural settings with the purpose of describing and interpreting a cultural group's way of life. So I think some of these, theoretical underpinnings, we have done, research that have included some of this before. But sometimes we might not just understand, what it is and the, its applicability, as well as what is the central focus. So ethnography is commonly used in anthropology, education, and other fields like sociology. Then we have the narrative inquiry, where the focus is on stories of individuals and how they make meaning from their experiences, with the purpose of exploring how individuals construct personal and social identities through storytelling. So a person will narrate their story or their understanding of a particular phenomena, or their experience of a particular phenomena. So it's suitable for life histories, personal experiences, and educational journeys. Okay, so moving on, these are the main characteristics of qualitative research. So this I will just maybe move with sort of with a pace on this, because we have quite a large ground to cover. It's quite a number of slides. I've tried to document each technique and how it works, defining it, how it works, including its pros and cons, as well as applicability. So it's quite a number. It's about 5 approaches that we'll look at, and including other emerging, techniques that came out as a result of pandemic, the previous pandemic, COVID-19. Okay, so the main characteristics of qualitative research is that it is naturalistic in inquiry, meaning that it is conducted in real-world settings, then also participant-centered, with emphasis being placed on understanding the world from the participants' viewpoint. Also rich in terms of descriptive data. You collect detailed and in-depth data, often in the form of words. Then for those who have done this kind of research, you end up with transcripts, field notes, and so on, with the aim of providing thick descriptions that convey context and meaning. Then it is inductive in nature, like I said, unlike quantitative, which is deductive, where you start from general to specific. With qualitative, it is inductive. So meaning that you analyze the data from the bottom up, would then come up with patterns, themes, and categories that will emerge from the data. After that, you can now then develop a theory rather than testing a theory. In quantitative, we come up with a hypothesis, then we test that hypothesis. The hypothesis is informed by theory, then we test the theory to prove it right or wrong. But here, this approach is inductive in nature, meaning that we actually draw a theory out of the results that we obtain, or the conclusions that we would have made. Then there's the issue of flexibility, meaning that the research design is often open and adaptable. Researchers may adjust methods as the study progresses based on findings. So your findings, you can adjust the course of direction that you would want the study to take. But however, it also have another characteristic is the holistic perspective, which looks at the whole phenomenon, not isolated variables. So everything that I'm saying here, just place it in contrast to the quantitative research design or quantitative research data collection techniques that we discussed on the 12th. Then there's an issue of subjectivity and reflexivity, where we are saying it recognizes the researcher's influence on the research process. So the researchers, they have to reflect on their own biases, positions, and impact on the study. Remember, when you are collecting this kind of data, you might hear some stories that also even you end up yourself being emotional. So that's the issue of subjectivity and reflexivity, which adds to biasness, right? So you end up being biased. Then it also have a small purposeful samples. Participants are selected intentionally, not randomly, to provide rich information relevant to the research question. So mostly you see that the sampling approach that is followed here, you have to select it's purposive sampling approach, where you select the participants based on some kind of determined characteristics and so on, depending on the nature of the inquiry that you want to make. Then it's also emergent design, meaning the research process is iterative, not strictly linear. Questions and methods may evolve as the study unfolds. Interpretive approach focuses on interpreting meanings, symbols, and social interactions as you seek to understand how and why, rather than how many or how much. Quantitative now, how many or how much. Okay, so unlike the quantitative designs, qualitative studies, they evolve. I've already mentioned that. Then the researcher interprets what is seen, heard, and understood. Right. The philosophical assumption, ontology, epistemology, axiology, methodology. I've mentioned that it's inductive, it's interpretive, and also context driven in terms of the methodology. So with inductive, you start from specific, then you go to general. So you start with doing your analysis. Then from there, you can now build a theory out of that or develop a theory out of that. So instead of testing a pre-existing hypothesis, you use open-ended questions and allow patterns, themes, and theories to emerge from the data, right? So which means it becomes a flexible approach. So when we talk of axiology, we are simply to sort of highlighting the role of values and ethics in the research process. Unlike the positivist paradigms that strive for objectivity, when you do a qualitative inquiry, you have to acknowledge the presence of researcher values, beliefs of the researcher, as well as biases that can exist. And in terms of epistemology, we are simply sort of concerned with the nature and generation of knowledge, where in a qualitative research, the knowledge is regarded as constructed between the researcher and the participant, right? Then in terms of ontology, we are saying we are now referring to the nature of reality. When you look at it from a constructivist or interpretivist perspective, we are saying reality is viewed as subjective and socially constructed, right? So rather than assuming a single objective reality, qualitative researchers, they recognize that individuals construct multiple realities based on their unique social, cultural, and historical contexts. Right. So I think you can see some striking differences between quantitative and the qualitative research, design, and analysis. Okay, this purpose is to explore phenomena, to understand meanings and perspectives, start context and process, generate new theories or concepts. That's the inductive part. Provide rich descriptive accounts. You are understanding a sort of a problem or phenomena from the perspective of the participants, or from the lived experience of those of the participants, of the experience of those who are living in that particular circumstance. So in empower marginalized voices, you will see some of the techniques that we look at. Maybe where you use photography and so on, photo voices, for example, observation, participation, where kids, those who cannot possibly, navigate power dynamics can be able to be heard as well. So those are the marginalized voices that we are talking about. It also inform practice and policy. And here we are simply saying that the contextual evidence that you get, it will improve, services, programs, or other interventions, that can lead to the upliftment of the standards of living of the general populace. That's why we do research. At the end, we propose, policy implications and so on. Although sometimes maybe those in the political side, they don't listen to what we will be saying, but we are obliged to do that as researchers, right? Then when we look at the emphasis of qualitative research and in terms of depth and over breadth, you see that when you do qualitative, you gather comprehensive sort of information. Then the contextual understanding, you situate findings within social, cultural, and institutional settings. Participant meaning, making you prioritize how individuals understand and interpret their realities. All right. So we are simply saying you are seeking to grasp how people make sense of their experiences, beliefs, or actions. So you prioritize participants' own words and interpretations. That's why when you're presenting qualitative results, you don't need to change the words that the participant used. To a larger extent, you don't have to sort of change the structure even of the responses that you got from the participants, because if you remove the words, if you edit the text, you can end up distorting the meaning of what the participant intended to say, right? So it's very, very minimal editing that you do when you are given such a task, or when you are writing, presenting results of such a nature. So because of this focus, you will see that the sample sizes, they are typically small and purposive, so meaning they are chosen for statistical representation, but not for statistical representation, but for their relevance to the research question. So you have to choose. So usually it's purposive sampling that is used when you do um, qualitative research, or use a qualitative research design. Uh, when do you use qualitative research method? When you want to explore the lived experiences of the people, or the phenomena that you deem to be complex, or a phenomena that is new, right? If you are seeking to understand lived experiences or perspectives, then you can use qualitative research. Need rich, in-depth data where you don't have to use closed questions. You can use open-ended questions where the data collection technique can be, you can use interviews that are unstructured, where you can seek a deeper understanding of the phenomena, asking questions, and even asking follow-up questions. You'll see that as we move on. Then also, if you want to start social or cultural context, if you aim to develop theory or conceptual understanding, that's the inductive nature. Um, then if you are exploring how and why questions, okay, which cannot be quantified. If you want to give voice to marginalized or underrepresented groups, like I've said, like kids, then you use participatory methods. So why is it, when you are looking at this qualitative research, there are also some terms that you can come up with, some basic terminologies. Pardon, that quantitative, I meant it to be qualitative. Um, so you can hear terms like coding, theme, saturation, reflexivity, triangulation, member checking, thick description, narrative, constant comparative method, bracketing, or phenomenology, or trustworthiness. So I will just speak maybe some of them. When you are talking of coding, we are referring to the process of categorizing segments of data. So that is what you do after you have received your interview transcripts, for example. Then you have to identify patterns or themes from that. You can code manually, you can also do that by using softwares nowadays that can do generate the themes for you, like Atlas TI, for example. Then issues of saturation, we are referring to the point at which no new information or themes are emerging from the data. So if you look at the data, there's no new information that you are now getting, then you have reached the saturation. Then the issue of triangulation, using multiple data sources, methods, or researchers to enhance the credibility and validity of the findings that you are getting, right? So there you can look at, you can triangulate the method, you can triangulate the data, you can also triangulate investigators, or you can triangulate theories using multiple theories. um, you know then member checking, a process where participants review and validate the accuracy of the data or interpretations made by the researcher. So after you have interpreted, then you can also give the participants to review what you were saying and approve whether it correct or it is wrong. When you talk of thick description, we are simply saying the information that you get is rich, it's detailed accounts of social setting or experience that allow readers to understand context and meaning. So let me talk about the issue of when we say narrative, a story or personal account shared by the participants. Then the bracketing of phenomenology, you are now setting aside your personal beliefs or biases to understand participants' lived experiences more authentically. So that's what we call bracketing. Then the issue of trustworthiness, the quality and rigor of qualitative research is assessed through credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. Okay, so you have to use those as a measure of how trustworthiness your results or the interpretations that you have made, as well as your conclusions, are. Right. Then so this is just a sort of a summary table where I look at the aspect in terms of qualitative and qualitative research design, the data type. Normally it's words, images, narratives, the research goal, understanding the meaning and experience, sample size, small and purposive, data collection, interviews, focus groups, observations, and other techniques that I'll be mentioning as we move forward. Then analysis and or approach, the use thematic content or narrative analysis. So I've seen a lot of thematic analysis being used, but also narrative. Some they use narrative analysis as well. So it's also a mix of these approaches. They use thematic and narrative as well, where you use those escapes that you are getting from the responses that you got from the participants, and then you have to use, you are using now the exact words that the participants were saying, right? But also the difference between qualitative and quantitative in terms of orientations, assumptions, multiple realities, research purpose, understanding a social situation from participants' perspective. So this is in contrast to quantitative, which established relationships between measured variables. Then the research method, flexible changing strategies, design images as data collected. So these are some of the things that I've already mentioned when I was giving the introduction or the understanding of the qualitative research design and analysis. Then the researcher's role, the researcher participates and becomes immersed in the research or social setting. That's where you have to look. Also, don't you have to overlook the issue of biasness within this. Then detailed context-based generalization, unlike universal context-free generalization that you can make when you follow the quantitative research design. Then in terms of qualitative and quantitative, again, the methods include focus groups, structured or in-depth interviews and reviews of documents for types of theme, primarily inductive process, more subjective, text-based, more in-depth information, unstructured or semi-structured response options, no statistical test, less generalizable. It's just sort of a reiteration of what I've presented in the past slide. Ms. Pila, just check it seems like there's a hand. Let's just see. Okay, I
No,
think
it was
maybe.
actually someone logging in. I'm not sure if
Okay.
there's a hand. Is there a hand?
No, there's no hand. I think it was someone joining.
Yes, it was just a notification of someone joining.
All right, no, thanks. Okay, so then now this is just an overview of this research design. We are going to look what we are going to focus on in this session: interviews, focus group discussions, observations, document or artifact analysis, diaries and journals, and visual methods. For example, photo voice. That is normally used for the vulnerable groups like children, for example. Okay, so we'll now look at this in detail, and I start with interviews. Definition of interviews: verbal data collection methods that involve direct interaction between the researcher and the participant, allowing the exploration of personal narratives, experiences, attitudes, and beliefs. Yeah, I think it's just a sort of a, you can, this description is rather rich. It sort of summarizes the essence of interviews. The goal is to uncover in-depth meaning from the participant's perspective. And these are types of interviews that we have. The structured interviews, where predetermined questions are consistent across participants, right? So you have predetermined questions that are consistently asked across all the participants. Then you can have it also in a semi structured form where the sort of a flexible guide that contains open-ended questions and also allows probing. So when you are probing, which means you can seek clarity or you can ask follow-up questions. Then we have the unstructured interviews, which is the one that is used more to gather, depth or deep information. So this is more informal, open conversation used in exploratory or ethnographic studies. So unstructured is like you're just talking. There's no, sort of a guide that they are following, or a sequence that they are following and asking the questions. You can even ask the questions that you did not plan to ask, that are generated as the interview progress. There's also what are called key informant interviews, where you have to look for individuals who are specialized, who have specialized knowledge about a particular topic, like those ones that you see on television, for example, on news and so on, where they seek as someone who is knowledgeable in that field. Then they interview the person. Okay. The question format, usually open-ended questions. Then we also have probing questions. So open-ended questions, they encourage participants to share rich, detailed responses without constraints, used when starting a topic or allowing the participant to narrate freely. An example can be, can you describe your experience with your postgraduate supervision, Jen? Right? So a person can describe, in any way, you can get multiple responses from this if you interview different people or asking the same question to different people. So here, you are looking at the where, when, how, why, who, so all those sort of collection of ways of asking questions. You can employ them when you are asking open-ended questions. Then when we talk of probing, we are simply saying, now these are questions aimed at exploring the responses more deeply and uncover underlying thoughts or feeling, right? So this comes from the sort of follow-up questions to the response that the participant would have gave. Then you follow up with another question or a probing question. They are useful when one need more detail or want to prompt a reflection after an initial response. So you can use questions like, could you explain that further? Can you, may you please add more clarity or information? That kind of questions. And then the question, we also have another question format, what are called clarifying questions, which are asked to ensure you understand the participant response accurately, right? They are useful when the response is vague, ambiguous, or needs interpretation. What do you mean by supportive, or in which context? That kind of, so that you get really because the aim is for you to clearly understand the phenomena from the participant's perspective. So the what the intention of the participant, or what the participant intends to convey to you, it must be accurate as much as possible, right? Then we, in terms of interviews, these are the merits and demerits: in-depth exploration, flexibility, participant, you get it from the participant perspective, contextual understanding, sensitive and complex topics can also be discussed, right? There's also participant empowerment, and let me just maybe elaborate in terms of the issue of participant empowerment. We are simply saying now you can give the participants voice and acknowledging the value of their experiences simply by listening to what the participant is saying, and also by engaging with the participants' contribution. So you can foster a sense of ownership over their narratives. You can also positively affect participants' self-esteem, self-reflection, and personal growth, right? But it also has some disadvantages, which includes subjectivity and researcher bias. You will see that the interaction between the researcher and participants sort of introduce the possibility of subjectivity interpretations and biases. So researchers may unintentionally influence participants' response through questioning techniques, non-verbal cues, or personal beliefs, right? Limited generalizability, time-consuming and resource-intensive, validity and reliability concerns, and time and context constraints. So in terms of validity and reliability concerns, we are simply saying that the interviews can be challenging. Sometimes it can be that issue when you are undertaking an interview. It can be a challenging exercise, where we are saying the extent to which the interviewer the interview data is accurately represent what the participant was saying. That could be also an issue that you have to take into consideration. And while the issue of reliability relates to consistency and replicability of the findings, when you do it through interviews, it's also maybe possibly especially the using open-ended questions, the issue of sort of you know uh, reliability becomes a concern as well. Then the issue of time and other context constraints. The interviews capture participants' experiences and perspective at a specific time and within a particular context, right? So maybe if you put it in another context, then that might not be true. And also, we have to take into consideration that experiences can evolve or change over time or in different contexts, right? So as a researcher, you must be mindful of the limitations of capturing participants' experience, recognizing that their findings may only partially represent the dynamic nature of human behavior and perceptions. So that's why we can also not overgeneralize as well. Applicability for those who are doing honors semi-structured interviews can be used for studies that are small, in-depth interviews for those who are doing masters with a well-defined scope. Those at doctoral level can use longitudinal or life history interviews for deep exploration, right? So these are some. So this is sort of a bit more at a more advanced level. And this is just, it's also open to discussion as we move on, that the number of interviews as well. But remember, you have to do the interviews until there's that data saturation, until you don't get new responses. But I know that people have this statistic that if you do 5 to 7 interviews for masters, it's appropriate and so on. Okay, so this is why when I was just doing some research, this is what I got, that the typical range for honors, it's 5 to 10 interviews. For those who are doing masters, 10 to 20 interviews. And for those who are at doctoral level, it can be 20 to 30 or more interviews, depending on the depth of the information that you want to seek, or the nature of inquiry that you are making. But we can discuss this in the open questions discussions. For some of you who are doing doctoral studies, to just maybe have a feel of how many interviews are you doing, or in your masters, how many interviews did you do if your study was of a qualitative nature. There's not really a consensus on this. If you go on online, or even sort of printed text as well, you don't really see a consensus in terms of the number. But I just know that more is better. More is better. Then let's move on to focus group discussions, which is our second, qualitative data collection technique that we are going to look at. It involves guided discussion with a small group of participants who share common characteristics relevant to the research topic. The purpose is to generate rich interactive data through group dynamics, where participants build upon each other's responses. So it's like a group, then you are sort of having a group guided discussion, where the participants can also sort of contribute even to the responses that the other participants would have made. It offers diverse perspectives and co-construct meanings in relation to the subject under study. This is the format that is normally taken. It's usually consists of 6 to 10 people. The discussion is facilitated by a moderator. There can be a note taker or assistant who may also be present to help with taking notes. Usually framed in 60 to 90 minutes in terms of duration. Then it is also it should be conducted in a neutral, comfortable environment. Remember, the environment also can influence the responses of the participants. You'll be dealing with human emotions, so you must make sure that the setting is comfortable, is neutral, and the environment is conducive for you to do the focus group discussion. They use open questions to build rapport and introduce the topic. Also, there are key questions focused on the core themes of the research that you'll be asking. Then probing questions to encourage elaboration or clarification from the participants. Also, closing questions to summarize and ensure completeness, right, of the whole exercise that you'll be doing. Merits rich contextual data, synergistic group dynamics, efficient data collection, reviews norms and consensus, encourages spontaneity, useful for exploratory research, and enables clarification and probing. So when we talk of synergistic group dynamics, we are saying the interactive setting can generate new perspectives as participants react to and build upon each other's response. You can also, in terms of efficient data collection, you can get multiple perspectives simultaneously, making this sort of data collection technique more time and cost efficient than conducting multiple individual interviews. Then on spontaneity, the less formal setting may promote open and spontaneous discussions, especially on topics participants are passionate about, right? Then okay, so we said you can use them when you are doing exploratory research, where they are ideal for exploring. You are looking at exploring new sort of areas where existing knowledge is limited. Okay, helping refine research questions and data collection instruments. But also, there's an issue of dominant participants. You know, I think also from our experiences, we know that certain conversations, there's someone who will be dominating now that conversation. So this is also happens when you are using focus groups. There are other individuals that are assertive who may dominate the conversation, so which sort of inhibit contribution from more reserved participants. Then group think risk, they can collude, then sort of participants, they may conform to what they perceive as the group consensus. You understand? And leading to sort of homogenized responses and loss of individual insights, right? Then moderator influence, limited confidentiality, because he has to do saying it in a group setting. Logistical challenges as well, bringing everyone together. Non-generalizability, that it just you have to be put in the context of those that were participating in that focus group. Social desirability bias as well. And when you talk of social desirability bias, we are simply saying the participants themselves, they may tailor their response to appear favorable to others in the group or to the moderator. But yet in reality, it's not like that. Then difficulty in handling conflict as well. So conflicts might arise, disagreements or strong opposing views can derail the discussion if not managed well by the moderator. Also, the recording and transcription complexity can also be an issue as well, where capturing overlapping dialogue and attributing comments accurately can technically and be analytically demanding. Let's say maybe people are engaging. So if you do not really moderate well as the moderator, then the data that you collect, the data collection exercise can be strenuous or difficult. Then you can apply it in honors. They may use 1 to 2 focus group discussion for small scale exploratory projects, often a supplementary method. Masters 2 to 4. Doctorate can include multiple focus group discussions across various groups, often combined with other methods for triangulation and deeper analysis, right? Um, then we have observations, which involves systematically watching, listening to, and recording behaviors, interactions, and events as they occur naturally in a specific setting. So this one also is used for, you can also use observations as well on quantitative, where you make use of an observation checklist. But even here, you can use an observation checklist. We'll talk about as we continue or progress with the presentation. So the observations allows the researcher to gain first-hand insights into social processes, contexts, and environments, often revealing subtle cues and unspoken practices that participants may overlook, underreport, or be unable to express in interviews or focus groups. So we are just observing. So usually the participants are not told that, yeah, I'm observing you, because if you tell them, then they can try to modify their behavior to suit the circumstances, right? So when we talk of non-verbal communication, we are talking of issues, things like body language, eye contact, facial expressions. When there's
Gabriel,
also issues.
can I disturb you? Are we still on the focus group slide?
No, we are on observations.
Okay, it just changed now. Thank you.
Okay, we are on observations. The participants, are we on the same slide? Are we on observations? Just show by virtual thumb. Okay, thank you. I see an indication from AEC, from Mercedes. So, thank you for confirming. Okay, so then we also have, so I was just talking about non-verbal communication, that it consists of issues of like body language, which eye contact, facial expressions. Then we also, when we talk of spatial behavior, you can look at sitting arrangements, proximity and distance, amongst the participants. Then all those are sort of examples of subtle cues that you can, that can arise in observations. Then we have tone and silence, where you can look at the tone of voice, pauses and silences. Then we can also have routine and rituals, unspoken rules. For example, in a classroom, students may only speak after raising a hand, even if this is never verbally stated, so it's just like a routine or a ritual that we know. So those are like sort of house rules that Miss Pila was referring to when she was introducing these sessions. Then you can also look at some under routine and rituals. There's patterns of interaction as well. Who speaks first? Who is interrupted? Or who gets the final say in a conversation can indicate status or influence. Then we have use of objects in space, where ownership signals resource access as well, in terms of who controls or uses tools, documents, or technology in a setting can reflect authority or exclusion. Then we have emotional atmosphere, where tension or ease can be observed. A sense of unease in a room, though hard to define, may be observed through collective body language or reduced interaction. Then a group cohesion, laughter, nodding, or mimicry and among participants can indicate agreement and social bonding. So all those are sort of non-verbal cues that you can look for, or subtle cues, some things that can not be observed in a normal setting. Then we are still on observations. We also have the types that we have, types of observation: participant observation, non-participant observation, structured observation, and unstructured observation. So in terms of participant observation, we are saying the researcher actively engages in the setting or community while observing, often used in ethnographic studies. So this, like I said, participants, they can know that they are being observed, or they should, in some cases, they don't need to know that they can be observed. So under participant observation, you can use the two. It can be overt, which means participants know that they are being observed, or it can be covert, that in a case where they should know that they are being observed. So the situation, depending on what you want to inquire on, can necessitate that you don't tell people that I'm observing you. Why? Because they can modify their behavior, right? Non-participant observation, the researcher observes without interacting or participating, maintaining a more detached stance. Then you have structured observation, which uses predefined checklists or coding schemes to systematically record specific behaviors or events. So I will talk about the checklist later, when I'm concluding this part of observations. Then we have structured observations, where open-ended and exploratory capturing questions can be used, capturing a wide range of behaviors and contextual information without a predetermined focus. So you just explore open-endedly, not questions as such. You explore open-endedly, where you are capturing behaviors and contextual information without any predetermined focus. So it's like a freestyle kind of observation. Then the purpose, understanding behaviors and social interactions in real time and natural settings, because you record as it happens. Documenting non-verbal communication, routines and practices, things that people do, but they are not saying it. Studying context and environments where participants may be unable or unwilling to articulate their experiences. And also complementing other qualitative methods like interviews or focus groups for purposes of triangulation. Advantages: rich contextual data uncovers the anticipated, appropriate for sensitive topics. It's a triangulation tool, immediate and ongoing insight, non-intrusive when obtrusive, and embeds the researcher in context. Right. Let me just look at the issue of it being, when we say it's unobtrusive, we are saying if done covertly or subtly, observation may reduce social desirability bias compared to self-reported methods. Right. So that is the advantage. And in terms of embedding the researcher in the context, we are saying it encourages deeper immersion and understanding of the community or setting understudy, fostering empathy and contextual sensitivity. Then the limitations include time intensive. There are also ethical concerns, especially with covert observation, where you can, where you may be possibly observing vulnerable populations that can raise ethical issues related to consent, privacy, and harm. Right. So even if those who are not vulnerable, issues of consent, they are very important in research, both quantitative and qualitative. There's also the Wharton effect, meaning that participants may alter their behavior if they know they are being observed, potentially compromising the authenticity of the data. Then there's researcher bias and subjectivity. Interpretations of observed behavior is influenced by the researcher's lens. Reflexivity is crucial to mitigate this kind of bias. Then complex data analysis, limited access and visibility, observer safety and well-being, lack of insight into participant intentions. So when you are observing, simply you cannot capture what people do. There's always that part where there should be sort of a motivation of why people are behaving in a particular way that you cannot capture. So it doesn't provide that much insight that could maybe be provided by other techniques. Then cultural and contextual misinterpretation as well can happen, where researchers unfamiliar with the cultural or situational context may misinterpret actions or meanings. One gesture might mean something in our setting and something else in 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 um in another context. That's why you see certain gesture can actually be linked to sort of maybe vulgar or other kind of interpretations that can be made if they are used in different contexts. Then the in terms of applicability, they can be used by honor students for short-term non-participant observations in small settings, classroom or workplace, for masters suitable for case studies, educational or community-based research, often using a combination of participant and non-participant approaches. Then for doctorates, they can involve longitudinal in-depth observation, potentially integrated into ethnographic or multi-method research
Dr.
designs.
Gabriel,
Yes.
I'm sorry to disturb you. The slides are showing that we're on structured interviews. Is it where we are?
I don't know why we are lagging. Why is lagging on that side? Should I stop and share again? Possibly.
Uh, yes, please. Maybe it might
Because
be
I'm on
network. I don't know from my
observation.
side or your side. No, we have structured interviews now on the screen. I'm not sure if the participants can also confirm what they're seeing.
Participants, may you kindly confirm
Or
what we
they
are
say it's
seeing there?
observation. Okay, it
Because
must be network from my side. I think you can continue, Dr. Gabriel, because the participants are saying it's observation from their side.
okay, all right. So I think maybe okay. Let's continue then.
Okay,
Um,
yes, we can continue. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of case study, it's also just important because case study it's a qualitative research technique as well, where you can also sort of seek in-depth context-rich investigation of bounded systems such as a person, group, organization, event, or community. So these are some of the ways in which observations uh, can be can be used. Then the observational checklist that I was talking about, which simply just outlines specific behaviors, events, or environmental features that a researcher intends to observe and record during field work. So you are having that checklist. So when you are recording, you record certain behaviors or events, but predetermined and on a checklist. Then it helps guide the observation process while still allowing for flexibility and openness to um, unanticipated findings. So they can how can it be used in qualitative research? They can be it is important for semi-structured observations. It is also important when you do on studies that are focused on ethnography or case studies, also in classroom or clinical settings with benefits of consistency and completeness, and also an issue of increasing transparency and replicability. Serves as a prompt for novice researchers to focus on key behaviors or contextual factors without becoming overwhelmed. It also supports thematic coding by organizing field notes under relevant categories. But it is also important to be cautious of unexpected or subtle behaviors, and it should not replace detailed field notes. You should also take detailed field notes. It should also not replace reflexive journaling or thick description. Okay, so which are sort of core elements of qualitative observation. Okay, and I think you understand what field notes are, as well as the other aspects that I've mentioned. Um, then we have what is called documented artifact analysis. Right, it's another technique where which is sort of a method that involves systematically reviewing and interpreting existing text, images, or physical objects that are relevant to the research topic. Right, so we call it document. Yes,
Dr. Gabriel,
yes.
we have a hand up from one of the participants. It's Badzeba. Can she ask the question?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Okay, please go ahead, Badzeba. I have enabled your mic.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a quick question with regards to observation. So my project is on orientation week. and I just want to know, like, because I was thinking of doing focus groups and then observations. So, am I, what's this? Do I have to do observations on the students I worked with during the focus groups or not really?
Can you just, I beg your pardon on the last part?
So, my question is that if I do focus group discussions with a certain number of students, do I also need to use the same students for the observations or not really?
Okay. It depends on what is it exactly that you are looking at in the study.
So in the study is focused on a sense of belonging
Okay.
for, yeah, so the focus is going to be on engineering students. So I'm still
Okay.
working on my proposal and the methodology parts, and I'm thinking about the methods, like the
Okay.
it's
So
my
so
it's my first time doing qualitative research also.
all
And so
right, let me just
mm,
say it also just depends on the sort of the conclusions that you are sort of expecting to make, within the study itself, and the nature of inquiry as well. Let's say possibly you would want to make a comparative analysis at the end. Then it can be important that maybe you don't have to use this a similar sort of a group, right?
mm,
Also in terms of triangulation that I was talking about as well. If you can use another group and see if you obtain sort of you end up reaching similar conclusions, that will be something that also adds to the reliability of the of the
oh,
of the study itself. So depending on what you want to do, you might choose not to use the same group that you have that you would have also used for focus group. In the event that you do that, then you don't have to inform them that you are observing them, right? So why? Because that they can modify their responses if they know that you are also are observing them. So which will lead sort of to sort of biased conclusions.
okay,
Or yes, I think let me just put it that way.
okay.
All
Thank you.
right. Okay. Okay, so we moving on. So I talked of the document or artifact analysis, where I said you are sort of systematically reviewing and interpreting existing text, images, or physical objects that are relevant to the research topic. The materials provide insights into social meanings, institutional practices, cultural norms, and historical context. So you have to go and look for this information on different platforms. Is it a new hand, Miss Pila? Or
I think it's an old hand,
okay, let
because
me.
it was.
All right, thank you. Okay, so unlike interviews or observations, the sources are not created for research purposes, but are part of the natural setting being studied. So you just have to go, if it's maybe looking at particular policies, then you have to go and look at the content of those policies and so on. So this is also another technique that is useful when you are doing research. At times, I do use the collection. I think I've used this content analysis before, but I'm amalgamating it with quantitative research techniques as well. So to mixed method is always good because you are fusing two. Whenever you fuse two elements, the quality is usually improved. Reliability is also usually sort of improved because in a way you are already triangulating, between research designs, right? Qualitative, quantitative, then mixed. So mixed methods, it's in. I see it also as a very noble approach that one can use depending on what you want to find out, of course, or the nature of inquiry that you are making. Um, of course. Then we moving on, still on the artifacts or document analysis. This is the nature, the types of documents and artifacts that you can get. Under documents, usually it's official records, policies, meeting minutes, strategic plans. Then we have personal documents like letters, diaries, emails, media content like newspaper, websites, blogs, academic or institutional publications, theses and reports. Then in terms of artifacts, we have photographs, artworks, tools, objects, digital content, for example, social media posts. There's a lot of, since the emergence of these social media platforms, there's a lot of research that has been done, also using where someone tried to harvest the data from social media, be it on X, formerly Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and so on. These major, social platforms. Then also under artifacts, items that are used or produced by individuals, communities, or institutions. So these are the sources of data that you can actually use when you do document or artifact analysis. The purpose is to provide historical contextual background, collaborating on triangulating findings from interviews or observations, gaining insight into organizational culture, language, and discourse, accessing data when direct engagement with participants is limited or not feasible, and exploring representations and narratives, right? So it's always important, especially for triangulation, that you can use more than one approach in your start. And when we talk of exploring representations and narratives, we are simply saying you can examine how identities, groups, or events are framed through media reports or artifacts, and also identify silences, omissions, or dominant discourses, within those contexts. These are the merits and demerits: non-intrusive and low risk, retrospective analysis. When we say retrospective analysis, we are saying it allows the researcher to look back at past events, communication, or records without relying on memory or self-reporting. Then rich source of cultural and institutional data, reviews unspoken or implicit meanings, accessible and cost-effective. Then demerits include lack of contextual clarity, selective survival, and availability. When we talk of selective survival and availability, we are saying only some documents or artifacts may have been preserved, archived, or made available, often those reflecting dominant narratives or power structures. So it also it's sort of based on the ideology as well, also the paradigm that possibly one is subscribing to. If we might not keep certain things that we can see maybe they damage the reputation of our communication, then we decide to destroy them. And some information, it's the way that it's stored. You might find that an article that was in a particular website, it doesn't exist anymore one day. Then there's issues that relate to authenticity and credibility. Are the documents, some of them, they may be biased, incomplete, outdated, or intentionally curated for a particular purpose, right? The issue of ideology that I've just been talking about. Then there's subjectivity in interpretation as well. Meaning is not always fixed. They may not reflect lived experiences in terms of that official documents, for example. They can differ significantly from actual practices or individual experiences, especially in bureaucratic or hierarchical settings. I've watched interviews where I've heard the officials saying there's no potholes in this particular road. I've never seen a pothole, but yet the pothole actually exists in those roads. So what is given to the public might not reflect the true reality of the situation on the ground. Right, applicability: owners can use a small number of documents, policy text, or programmable handbooks to support or frame a study. For masters, useful in case studies, organizational research, or discourse analysis, often in conjunction with interviews. Then for doctoral levels, it can enable in-depth content or thematic analysis of multiple documents and artifacts over time or across contexts, longitudinal, often informing a core part of research strategy. Then we have diaries and journals, which are qualitative data sources that involve participants recording their personal experiences, thoughts, feelings, or reflections over a specified period. I know ladies, they like journals. But men, I don't know. Maybe I stand to hear when we do the question open discussion. What men also, if there are men who keep journals, I normally don't. I don't have a journal, but I've seen ladies having journals and keeping documenting their life and experiences over time. So these records, they are usually self-written and serve as a first-person account of lived experiences. In research, they are used to capture subjective, temporal, and emotional aspects of participants' realities that may not surface in interviews or focus groups. Okay, so it's important to just use using multiple techniques is very important for triangulation, and I think I'm still emphasizing on that. Then the types of diaries and journals, structured diaries. We have semi-structured diaries, unstructured or free-form journals, then audio, visual, or video diaries, where participants record voice or video entries, particularly useful when literacy is a concern or when capturing emotion and tone is important. Then we have digital diaries, use of blogs, mobile apps, email submissions, to document experiences in real time. And semi-structured is just a combination of guided topics and open entries. When it's structured, participants respond to the specific prompts or questions provided by the researcher. Then we have purpose and use, capturing daily routines, transitions, or ongoing processes, understanding how participants make sense of their experiences over time, collecting private or emotionally sensitive data that participants may not express face to face, and enabling longitudinal insight in reflective or narrative studies. Then we can have them in terms of we another important moving from diaries. Another important form is also the visual participatory methods, where visual methods that involve the use of images, videos, drawings, or other visual media are used to collect or represent data. So participatory methods involves actively engaging participants in the research process, giving them a role in data generation, interpretation, or dissemination. So that is sort of a participatory approach. Then the two methods, they usually overlap, encouraging co-construction of meaning and empowerment of participants, right? In terms of visual methods, you can have photo elicitation, video diaries, drawing and mapping, and collage or artifact creation, where you are combining images, text, and objects to express meaning. I think I've seen one study when I was holding a research writing consultation where a person used the collage or artifact creation. Then drawing and mapping, participants, they create visual representations. That is lifelines, community maps, and so on. Then video diaries, participants, they record personal experiences using video. Photo elicitation, participants or researchers take photographs to prompt discussion. Then you discuss those photographs that you would have taken. Then the participatory methods, we have the participatory rural appraisal, which includes mapping, seasonal calendars, and ranking exercises. Then participatory action research, where participants collaborate as co-researchers to create social change. Right? Then we have storyboarding or timeline building, where visual tools are used to track experiences or narratives. Then the purpose, empower participants by valuing their voice and creativity, capture data that is emotive, symbolic, or difficult to express verbally, foster deeper engagement and co-interpretation of meanings, useful in research, especially with children. I've spoken about the issue of marginalized group or cross-cultural context. So you just take photos, then you can sort of analyze or build conversations around those photos. You don't have to engage the students, the children physically, or the marginalized, or vulnerable groups, in person. Advantages: encourages creativity, reflection, and engagement. It enables access to non-verbal or tacit knowledge, supports inclusive and democratic research practices, generates rich, multi-layered data. Disadvantage requires clear ethical guidance, especially for visual data involving people, these issues of POPIA Act and so on. Can be resource intensive, equipment, time analysis skills, interpretation can be subjective and context dependent. It's an image. It's a still image. It's not saying anything. So the way that you interpret it might be subjective and differ from one context to another. Not all participants may be comfortable with visual expressions. Okay, some they will say, yeah, I'm not photogenic. Then applicability owners, they can use it at a small scale using creative reflection or supplementary data. Masters, they can use it in case studies, participatory projects, or youth research. Doctoral, valuable for innovative, community-based or visual ethnographic studies, often combined with other methods. Then there's these imaging techniques. This just came, I think, during times of COVID. They just rose in prominence. Mobile ethnograph, where participants use mobile phones to record experiences. Then we have social media mining. I've spoken about that even before, where you analyze posts, hashtags, digital engagement on social platforms. Then online interviews or focus groups that can be done through Zoom, MS Teams, and WhatsApp. I think that's what the sort of researchers are now doing to minimize cost. Instead of going and do it in person, then they just have to do it using online platforms. So these are sort of imaging techniques that are being used and tools that are used to complement the existing or traditional forms of data collecting qualitative data. Then this is just sort of a summary of the qualitative data collection techniques, in-depth interviews, focus groups, observations, document analysis, diaries or journals, visual participatory methods. So I just sort of sum up to say where are they best used for. It's in-depth interviews, individual perspectives, focus groups, group dynamics and social norms, observations, behaviors, interactions, document analysis, historical, contextual insight, diaries or journals, longitudinal reflection, visual participatory methods, community or youth-based research. So this is the sort of the focus of the start. What is it that you seek to inquire, right? If you want individual perspective, then you can use in-depth interviews, and that also is equally applied to the other techniques. The key tools that you use for in-depth interviews, audio and transcripts, for focus groups, audio, video, and guides, it's important you can record so that you can always revisit and try to really, understand what the group was saying instead of just taking notes. Then observations, field notes, right? Then you can also in observations. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if you can combine it with filming as well, with video, or maybe with photos if it's not considered spying. Then the textual document analysis, textual artifacts, then the textual or artifacts, then diary or journals, written logs, visual participatory methods. You can have photos and drawings for that. I think social workers they do use a lot of that. If even in court settings, they also use this kind of a method. Always there are issues of ethics as well that you have to be subscribed to, or that you have to be aware of. Informed and voluntary consent, confidentiality and anonymity, protecting vulnerable groups, reciprocity. What do participants gain out of this research that you are doing? Then cultural and contextual sensitivity, including uses of certain terms that may be considered, hateful in other contexts and not in other contexts, for example. Then these are my concluding remarks. When you look at qualitative techniques, we see that they are diverse, they are also adaptable, and they are rich in insight. And usually, it's always important to combine them with other techniques. So combining methods strengthens data validity, Then selection depends on context, goals, and ethical considerations. Also, researcher reflexivity is vital to ensure that the analysis that you are doing and the data collection exercises has been rigorous. Ms. Pila, I have reached the end of the presentation, and I hand over to you so that you can open the discussion session for us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gabriel, for that detailed presentation. Firstly, for giving us a broader description of the qualitative research, what it means, and for giving us the main characteristics of the qualitative research and also the purpose of qualitative research, and giving us a detailed description of the techniques or the data collection techniques that can be used in qualitative research. I think we got a clear understanding now, even some of the aspects that we did not know, or some of the data collection tool techniques of qualitative research that we did not know of. We now have a clear understanding of those. And I would like to now give an opportunity to the participants to engage with Dr. Gabriel on a question and answer session where you can raise your questions. I will just unmute enable everyone's mic so that it's easy for you to just unmute and ask your question. Just a minute while I do that. Perfect. So all the mics are now enabled, and you can raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask your question. We already have a question on the chat box, Dr. Gabriel, from Oswald, and he says, is a Delphi technique a form of mixed methods design?
The Delphi technique, it is a form of a. All right, let me just. I'm just trying to just go back on my slides. I'm just checking where I was documenting some of that. Okay, so when you look at the Delphi technique on its own, it is a qualitative technique, right? But it's also a technique that you, for something to be mixed, is because of you have mixed both a quantitative and qualitative. When you talk in terms of research methods and design. But the Delphi technique itself is used to sort of gather expert opinions or consensus on maybe a particular topic. But you can use there are different methods that you can also use to gather those insights, right? You can use questionnaires. You can also seek maybe possibly feedback, from particular people that would have identified. So I can say that it's not a mixed method technique. It's not a mixed method technique. For me, it falls under the qualitative. It's a qualitative technique for me.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Gabriel. I hope you answered, Oswald. We have another comment from Bad Zeba, and he says, please share strategies for designing the data collection tools. Maybe that could be a separate workshop. Dr. Gabriel, what do you think?
Yeah, okay. Maybe, of course, surely it can be a data collection. It can be sort of another a topic for another day. Just rephrase it again. I'm not having access to my chat.
Okay, strategies for designing, it says, please share strategies for designing the data collection tools.
Okay, so it's always important that when you are designing your data collection tool, everything has to speak to the topic that you you are studying, or the nature of inquiry that you want to make. So I think I've stressed on that and emphasized that during the course of throughout the course of the presentation. So you have first the data collection tool that you are using. It should be a correct a tool in terms of the research design that you are using. If it's a qualitative research design, then that's why we're presenting all the data collection tools that are used for qualitative research. I even included, I don't see if the audience still see my slides. Can they still see the slides?
Yes, we still see the slides. On
Okay,
my side, it's on the
let me
last
just
slide
go
as
back
open
to
discussion.
where I was talking about this summary. Okay, so this, where is it best used for? Right. So this is just in terms of the data collection techniques for qualitative. So in which circumstances can you use in-depth interviews? In which circumstances can you use focus groups, including even the design of the, if you are using in-depth, if it's interviews that you are using, if there is a sort of the interview protocol and everything that you have to do, the kind of questions that you are going to ask, whether are they open-ended questions, are they closed questions, that will speak to the nature of inquiry that you want to make, as well as the research design that you are applying in your study, right? So if you use tools for qualitative, yet you are doing a quantitative inquiry, then it becomes wrong. The same also can be applied on the other end as well. If it's a quantitative study, then you don't have to use qualitative data collection techniques. But even within the design itself, the design is correct. That technique as well, you must make sure that everything that should be conformed to, you have conformed to that, including the design of maybe the questions that are going to ask, the manner in which you undertake the interview yourself as an interviewer as well. It has a significance on the type of responses that you are also going to get from the person that you are interviewing, including the questions that you will be asking. Remember, we spoke of probing questions. We also spoke of, that you can also make clarification questions and so on. So that depends on the reviewer as well, to a larger extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. I hope you answered Badziba. We still have some minutes left, so you can still ask your questions, participants, and just make sure that you get the most out of this workshop. Please do ask questions on the chat, and you can raise your hand also to ask your questions. Dr. Gabriel, I have a question. I remember you spoke about when we were discussing the observation part, and you spoke about observing participants when they are not aware, since maybe they might change or alter their actions to suit, or to impress the, observer. So I just wanted to just ask if that does not conflict with the participants' consent.
Okay, Ms. Bill, I think I've already mentioned something in that regard when I was almost concluding that section. So of course it does. Of course it does, and it is an ethical concern when you do observations. But also, so there are certain types of research where one have to, sort of weigh the benefits against the sort of the if we are having any sort of demerits, on that. Let me put COVID, for example. Was it necessary for a COVID vaccine to be developed? Right. For those who believed that COVID was there, remember there was a lot of conspiracy theories and so on that surrounded that. Some still, even today, maybe they don't believe that there was the pandemic was real. But I feel like there was a need to do that. Yes. Is it for a social good? Yes, of course it is for a social good. But is it good that maybe a person is injected something that they okay, those trials that are done, right? The trials that are done, is it good? Maybe that's something we can test, a sort of a vaccine that is being developed that we are not sure of, that we do not know the effects on a person. Of course, we can beg to differ and say no, because I might die. There are people who died because the COVID vaccine was being developed, right? But also there are many people who were saved because the development led to a vaccine that sort of ended the pandemic, or sort of it have subsided, as we speak. Maybe today we have even forgotten that it existed, right? But what I'm trying to say is that it depends on the nature of inquiry that you are making and whether the benefits outweighs the cost of that, right? If the benefits are more, then of course you can observe, quietly. And also the issue, like I've indicated, that if I know that I'm being observed, of course I'll behave in a manner that suits maybe possibly the circumstances where I am in, isn't it? So I remember when we were like children, if your parents just look at you, you can modify your behavior, isn't it? So that also applies to this kind of exercises. If I know that I'm being observed, then I'm going to do things maybe in a manner that appeals to what you. It's like you pay me when you're doing a research, then you pay me to give you answers. I'll give you the answers possibly that we want to hear, isn't it? Because you have paid me, sort of. So there's always some costs and benefits that you have to be put into perspective when you are deciding whether which uh, does it have to be overt or covert. Um, Also, depending, is linked to the issue of ethical concerns as well. You don't have to forget that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gabriel. And are there more questions from the participants?
I think the session was
Okay.
very informative. Maybe the participants can confirm. But I see much of the things are indeed self-explanatory, and sharing of the resources as well, both the slides and the recording. Can be able to even follow and make use of these resources after the conclusion of this session.
Yes, definitely, Dr. Gabriel. I think the session was very detailed and you have explained everything into detail. And thank you so much for that. And without any further questions, if there are no more questions from the participants, I think we can now conclude the session. And let me just take this opportunity to thank the participants for joining us on this workshop today and for engaging with us during the workshop. Let me just remind everybody to please complete the survey form that is on the chat. I'm going to put it again for the last time. Before you leave the session, please complete the feedback survey so that you can also get the certificates of attendance. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Gabriel, for firstly preparing for this presentation and presenting. Thank you so much for honoring the invitation and presenting such a detailed and insightful presentation. Thank you very much. And without any further questions, I will then close the workshop and wish everybody to have a wonderful day further. Thank you.
Miss Pila, uh, Miss Pila, are you there? Uh,
Yes, I am still
yes, I
here.
see a question. We can wait. I see there's a question that is being typed on the chat. I don't know whether it's a question or
Y-
it's a contribution, but we can
Okay,
just
yes,
wait.
I'm
Yeah.
noticing.
Okay.
Yes. But Zeba, you can also unmute yourself if you like to speak on your question or your comment. Okay, I see the person who was typing just left the chat.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure, but I'll just
We can conclude then. It's fine.
Yes, we can conclude. Thank you very
Ah,
much, Dr. Gabriel.
okay, you're welcome, Miss Bella. Thank you. Bye.